say something I'm not supposed to say.
That's okay. That's the whole point.
The Islamic Republic of Iran.
Obama was the worst president in modern American history.
Welcome to Unfiltered with Adam. I have a very special guest today, Kevin Weisman. Kevin is a drummer, musician, and actor, most famously known for the awesome television show that used to be on ABC. It was J.J. Abrams' first produced show, Alias. He co-starred with Jennifer Garner and Victor Garber and Ron Rifkin. Kevin is from Los Angeles. He played Dale Yorks on Marvel's Runaways. And Kevin is also heavily, deeply involved in a lot of nonprofit work. And in particular, Jewish charities focusing on assisting children with reading disabilities. Obviously, we're going to talk about what's going on in Israel and the rise of anti-Semitism and the craziness that has become the world. And I think it's even funnier that you were on Alias, which was a show that really dealt with the geopolitical reality, or at least the world that it had created in the show. But tell me just a little bit about, because I'm interested, what's the nonprofit that you work with?
Well, I have to correct one thing you said, though. You said it was J.J. Abrams' first produced show. He and I met on his first produced show before your time, young man.
Oh, yeah.
Felicity. Felicity
was the first show.
But Correa LA is an organization. They work with classrooms, children, not only with like reading disabilities, but just with getting kids to read in not only the Jewish community, but without, you don't have to be Jewish for Correa LA to come. It started with, they asked myself to come and read to classrooms. The kids were so responsive, and some of them hadn't really even been read to before. A lot of their parents, work however many hours a day. I got involved. I go to as many schools as I can. I've worked with individuals as well. It's a great organization. I encourage people to check it out.
That's amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah.
What was the moment for you where you really put your Jewish identity out in the forefront? Being a Jew is a huge part of who I am, because even in your acting, your Jewishness kind of broken through the fourth wall. Like even like we were talking about in Alias, that was something that you brought up with JJ, that you wanted that conversation to happen.
Yeah.
Raising your child Jewish on the show. Your character was also Jewish.
That was my discussion with JJ Abrams. Yeah, we talked about that, and I said, let's make him Jewish. Flinkman. I mean, there's not a more Jewish name than that.
For sure.
I think
and he was in tech. It was a very neurotic Jewish character.
Yeah, and it's funny. People would come up to me and say, "Hey, are you really, proficient at tech? I have this problem." I'm like, "Not really, but I think it's just ingrained in our DNA to be able to access neuroses and intelligence."
I wonder why. It's not like
why
bad has happened to us.
No, we're what, 0.02% of the population. We've received 40% of the Pulitzers, which is a real testament to the drive. We're all human beings. It's like we were saying, the choice you make. Every Jewish holiday was, they tried to kill us, we survived, let's eat, And so it's like we're always trying to survive. So I think it's a inherent survival mechanism. Grew up Reformed Jewish here in Los Angeles, Wilshire Boulevard Temple, which is one of the oldest congregations in the country. My kids are 5th generation members.
Oh, wow, that's huge.
And that's what I love about Judaism, is that we're supposed to ask questions, and I always liked that as a kid. I was, of course, the Hebrew school that got sent to the rabbi because I'm yapping too much or trying to make the other kids laugh or whatever. But they loved me, but they were also like, you need to shut the up. Yes. I was like, I'm sorry. I do a good imitation of Rabbi Donnell. So I've always been Jewish. I always say, like at the beginning of a job, I'm like Sandy Koufax. I will not work on Yom Kippur. They clear that always. In terms of what's happened since October 7th, I remember I had just gone to a concert. When I got home at 11:30, I see this in real time happening. I'm texting my daughter. I say, "Oh my God, go online. There's something horrible happening in Israel right now." And so we're on the phone in real time, watching the New York Times update. And I've never felt so sick in my life. Texted a friend the next day who's not Jewish and who's a great friend of the Jews, and not an anti-Semite or anything. I'm beside myself, didn't sleep, seeing what's going on. And I said, can you believe what happened with Israel, women and children? He's like, well, they have women and children too.
Oh, Jesus.
He has since apologized. He didn't realize the scope of what had happened on October 7th. That's exactly the kind of thing we're dealing with from people that just are ignorant and don't understand.
Do you think it's just ignorance?
It's anti-Semitism.
Yeah, it's
of course. Yeah.
What has this been like for you?
Yeah, I'm nauseous every day. Right? We're not asking certain people who have a large presence to really say anything else except let's bring these hostages home. Yeah. And the fact that some haven't is really upsetting. You have to put your career aside. And we all say it. Yeah, free Palestine from a terrorist organization, from Hamas. And that's what we're all saying. I read today that there is a timeline now Netanyahu has said in terms of finishing trying to find Sinwar in Rafah.
Everybody wants to replace Netanyahu, but we know that going to elections right now is a bad idea. Everybody wants to bring the house.
They wanted to before. People forget that there were 100,000 students protesting Netanyahu a week before, right?
I personally believe that our politicians today in Israel are the worst Jewish leaders and really Jewish communal leaders in general in America running, the federations and some of these bigger organizations. I think we have the worst leadership that we've had since Moses took us out of Egypt.
I miss the days of Yitzhak Rabin. He was how does that happen though? Can you call for an election with the Knesset? I'm a bit ignorant.
There are elections right after this war. And responsibly, we've seen that a number of different politicians, army people, and intelligence people have started to say, I need to be investigated. My actions need to be investigated. And that's very responsible. It's interesting that you said Yitzhak Rabin, because, right before Yitzhak Rabin was shot, he was talking about pulling out of the Oslo Accords.
Because my understanding was he was proponent of a two-state solution to that effect, and then a very conservative Jewish person shot him.
An ultra-Orthodox, ultra-nationalist shot him, who believed we shouldn't be compromising on any land. And Yigal Amir, he's still in jail. But if you read, and I encourage everybody to read Yitzhak Rabin's final speech in the Knesset, he talks about a military presence on the Jordan River. He talks about a demilitarized Palestinian entity. He does not talk about statehood. He talks about self-governance. What Trump's foreign policy team was able to do, Kushner and Friedman, they had more treaties signed than any other foreign policy team, and Pompeo, in the history of the Secretary of State and the State Department. That way of peacemaking is what worked, and they're going backward now. And it's very frustrating. And no Israeli is going to be okay with rewarding the Palestinians with a state after October 7th. I think that October 7th was the major attempt at this final jihad, or this final attempt to blow out the Saudi Arabia peace process.
Right, that's what I understand. That was getting very close, right? And that was a response to that potential peace agreement. Sure. Right.
What is this like for you?
My main focus has really been on this kind of anti-Semitic uprising, and which is why I did that video that I was asked, I'm a proud Jew and I don't stand for anti-Semitism. Obviously, I have two high school students, one of whom will be at college. And, we've tried to look at schools that potentially there would not be any risk going there as a result of an anti-Semitic protest uprising. Very hard to predict, because people's latent anti-Semitism is certainly coming to the forefront because they feel empowered. And that is very disconcerting. So I'm not going to pretend that you or Ben Shapiro or somebody that can really speak eloquently on the history and the politics. I mean, I do know that Jews have been the predominant citizens of the land of Israel for over 3,000 years. I mean, that's documented. And when I try to explain the history to people, everybody has a revisionist view of history in this country as well. I mean,
for sure.
The U.S. has blood on their hands, that's for sure. I'm talking about in terms of indigenous populations.
Listen, I was at the opening of the indigenous embassy in Jerusalem. And there were leaders from the Cree, the Navajo, tons of different indigenous peoples from all over the world. And one of them said the most amazing things. They were like, if the Jewish people are not indigenous to the land of Israel, none of us are indigenous.
Oh, that's beautiful. There you go. I have a hard time putting it into words. Obviously, we're all very upset. We want this to be over.
This is a
Yes.
really emotional thing.
We want this conflict to be over. We want Hamas to be finished, and we want the hostages to come home, and we want the Palestinian civilians to be able to rebuild their lives and to end the bloodshed. But it's in Hamas's hands. I met with a friend somebody who I volunteered with, who was attending a lot of rallies for Free Palestine and this and that. And I messaged her. I was like, just so you know, this was very, very soon after October 7th. And we lost a family friend's son who was at the music festival. His name was Ron, and a beautiful young boy, 22 years old. My ex-sister-in-law and her whole family, who I'm very close with, knew him very well. It was very emotional. Obviously, beautiful, beautiful boy. And, I told her that, and she said, oh, I'm sorry that you say he was killed or something. I was like, I say he was killed. Okay. And now, what does that mean? I have a great friend named David Berman, who you should have on this podcast. He was on the show CSI, and he is very, like you, very knowledgeable about the history. I said, David, let's get together first. I'm going to have this meeting with a friend of mine, and I want to be as educated as possible. And she just wouldn't. She was selective listening. It was.
It's all emotional for them.
Yeah.
There's nothing logical about it.
By the way, she grew up in the South, and she's never been to Israel. And also, she's a member of the LGBTQ community, and which is beautiful. But I say, spend some time under Hamas's rule. I don't think you would have the same. It's a bit counterintuitive. If
it's completely counterintuitive, and it makes sense.
I understand that they see images of civilian deaths in Gaza, and it's horrifying for all humans.
But did they watch the footage of October the 7th? That's my question.
I don't know. Is that footage even
available? Because most people that I interact with or have been on the news with or have interviewed, there's one way they speak if they've seen that footage, and there's one way they speak if they haven't.
They haven't. I haven't seen the footage, but of course I'm aware of it, and in no way do I not believe how horrible it was, and how Israel is such a small country that I think every citizen of Israel was affected by October 7th.
Are you afraid at all?
I'm a liberal guy here in LA, and I'm out there was out there for Black Lives Matter.
You feel betrayed by Black Lives Matter?
I mean, it's hard not to. I know there's been some really difficult things said, and the support has not been there. There are Black citizens that are supportive, and there's a great guy on Instagram who I love, Black and Jewish. Follow him. And there are some great members of the community that are supportive. But yes, the organization Black Lives Matter has, unfortunately, it has been the opposite, and it's very upsetting. Well, I feel like we're a little bit on our own. We're on an island, and it is disconcerting, but it has also brought the community together, and it has brought people who aren't Jewish, who support or are against anti-Semitism. I'm against Islamophobia. I mean, any injustice in the world, Jews have been there.
I feel abandoned. Like
I do. Yeah, we're on an island. Yeah, it's upsetting.
Jews are always trying to be accepted everywhere. We always want to be championing all these, other
causes. Yeah.
Now that October 7th has happened, now that this war has happened, I feel like we're seeing people's true colors.
The fact that Amy Winehouse, who is gone, has a statue. Her Star of David was replaced by a Palestinian on a statue, a flag. It's like, what is happening? And I remember also there was a huge protest in front of the Museum of Tolerance, which is a Holocaust museum.
And it's not about
rating Jews for coming out of watching the footage from October 7th. I've posted very, very supportive comments to people that are not related to the war, to Israel, to Gaza, and I will have people respond not in kind. And you're like, how is it because I'm Jewish? Is that why you're like, this has nothing to do with anything you're thinking it has to do with. I'm supporting students being safe on campus. That's my main objective right now, is to make sure that students like my daughters are safe on campus. And so I'm really putting myself out there to make sure I can assist in any way possible to just make sure kids are safe.
I want to ask you about Jennifer Garner, who's working with the UN for Save the Children, who really in the early 2000s was like the pinnacle television personality for feminism, given her character on Alias.
Yeah, I still get young girls who come up to me and are inspired.
For sure. And recently there was a picture that made the rounds of her daughter Violet wearing a pro-Palestinian watermelon shirt, and which is crazy because watermelons have never really been associated with Palestinians. It's always been associated with Israelis. And it's like,
I didn't even understand that whole watermelon thing.
Like, there's a whole response to take the watermelon back, which I think is really funny. But like, have you communicated with her since this has happened? Because given like everything that we know about the UN and like how the UN did not even condemn October the 7th, and what we know that has been proven about the rape and the necrophilia and the pedophilia and the barbarity, like how does it, I want to know what your opinion is. Have you talked to her?
She did reach out to apologize, and
She did.
Yeah, and said she had reached out to all of her Jewish community, of which is large in her world. She's very good friends with JJ and Ron and Victor, and she's a wonderful person and one of the best people I've ever worked with.
Supposed to be like the most amazing human being in the world.
Yeah,
like,
she
I was really shocked by this.
I don't think she knew. And I think Violet did the same. I understand Violet did the same. I think that there was some misunderstanding of what that symbol was what I was intoned to me. I think they both thought it was a symbol for peace, is what I was told.
Publicly come out to like condemn the violence though?
Has she? I don't know. She did reach out to tell me, because she knows I'm obviously Jewish and very active, and I don't think she's anti-Semitic. And I say that. I'll say that to my grave. I know she's not. I know she's not. I said, thank you for reaching out. And of course, it's a very difficult time. Obviously, people are going to react, because she got a very swift response.
Yeah, no, it was insane. I understand why there was a swift response. One, because of Mark Ruffalo and the work that she's done with Mark Ruffalo constantly. And she's worked a lot. And Mark is a rabid anti-Semite.
Anti-Semitic, or is he? I know he's posted for ceasefire.
You don't say that and then not say bring the hostages home. I would say, because of her work with the UN and given the UN's complicity with what's happened and the proof over and over again and the lack of condemnation. And 3, because she is known as this wonderful, everybody knows that one of Jennifer Garner's favorite things to do is garden.
She felt terrible. And that I want that to be known. Violet didn't know. She didn't know. I feel a little uncomfortable about it because I don't want to divulge any information about our personal messages, but she's very supportive of the Jewish community, and she's very supportive of me and my children, and her family. It's a beautiful family. So I know she felt terrible. She said
the UN, and like Jewish and Israeli women are at this point after the Me Too movement where apparently it's okay to rape Jewish women.
I know, that's so horrible. The sexual assault is,
I
don't understand.
Did you read the New York Times article?
Yeah. Some women were impregnated, I think.
They're not having their menstrual cycle. Okay. Not only that, we know that they were raping dead women. And like when you hear Mark Ruffalo calling for a ceasefire, the way that he's doing it and not acknowledging the fact that there was a ceasefire on October 6th, and that you're asking us to stop fighting people that raped both men and women's dead bodies and impregnated.
Unbelievable.
And I mean,
I can't even
not only
comprehend.
that, all of the hostages, especially Mia Shrem, she was talking about being held in a residential home, which means that our hostages are most likely in civilian homes, which makes this a completely different type of conflict, and just nobody's approaching it with nuance.
Yeah.
I have to ask you for some final thoughts.
Hey, just bring them home. Stop anti-Semitism. Let's stay positive in the Jewish community, and we need all the support we can get, and we appreciate it. And we would love the support here in this country in the fight against anti-Semitism. So if you happen to be listening to this, please support us in that fight. Like we will support you, like the Jews support you. We support everybody.
Well, this has been a great episode of Unfiltered with Adam, with my very special guest, actor and musician Kevin Weisman. I really appreciate you coming on.
Oh.
Okay, we're done.